Thank you for standing by, and welcome to the Invex Therapeutics Limited Quarterly Investor Conference Call. All participants are in a listen-only mode. There will be a presentation followed by a question and answer session. If you wish to ask a question via the phones, you will need to press the star key, followed by the number 1 on your telephone keypad. I would now like to hand the conference over to Dr. Tom Duthy, Executive Director. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to present to you a summary of the company's financial performance and quarterly activities for the 3 months ended 31 March 2022, being Q3 FY22. I trust all of you on today's call have had a chance to read the updated announcement as lodged with the ASX this morning. I'd now like to provide an overview of the company's quarterly performance and outlook. I'd like to start with our financials before turning to our operational update. In this regard, Invex remains in a strong financial position with cash and cash equivalents of 30.4 million, with overall cash outflows for the quarter of 1 million, up from 0.6 million in Q2. Cash outflows from operating expenditure included R&D expenditure for the quarter of 0.67 million, reflecting an increase in costs associated with the company's contract research organisation managing the Phase 3 trial, along with clinical and regulatory consultants, and intellectual property costs related to Invex's patent and trademark portfolio. In addition, the company incurred costs associated with direct R&D staff of 0.16 million. Our admin and corporate costs of 0.21 million decreased 9% compared to Q2 FY2022. During the quarter, we did not receive any further government grants and tax incentives compared to the 0.18 million received from the UK government for eligible FY21 R&D expenditure in Q2. As the company is undertaking active R&D in Australia now with the Phase 3 trial, Australian government R&D tax incentives are expected to be recognised in future financial years. I will reiterate cash outflows are expected to increase in subsequent periods as the company commences recruitment for the Phase 3 IEH Evolve trial. However, as you can see by the quarterly, our corporate and admin costs remain low at just 0.2 million. Hence, a significant portion of group spend is dedicated to IEH Evolve. Notwithstanding the increase in cash utilisation in subsequent periods, the company is fully funded to complete the trial for Presendin, our sustained release exenatide formulation, for registration purposes in the European Union, UK and Australia from our current cash reserves. Turning now to some of the operating highlights for the quarter, it was another busy quarter of activities for the company, and we continue to make solid progress across a number of fronts related to primarily IEH Evolve. We completed a number of key service contracts with third-party vendors, including with a leading contract research organisation, as well as drug importation, packaging, labelling and distribution companies. In addition, Invex is working closely with its manufacturing partner Petron and advisors to complete the necessary technical, manufacturing and control documentation alongside a comprehensive review of non-clinical and clinical data for exenatide in preparation for new clinical trial applications, or CTAs, planned for the UK, Europe and the United States during the June quarter. The company has also been actively engaging with potential clinical sites for participation in the IEH Evolve clinical trial. Progress has been excellent to date, with more than 40 centres identified. As you may recall, Invex aims to open approximately 37 clinical sites across the US, Europe, the UK, Australia, and we have also now included New Zealand and Israel. We have leveraged our recent podium presence at the 48th annual meeting of the North American Neuro-Ophthalmology Society, or NANOS, attended by Invex's Executive Director and Chief Scientific Officer, Professor Alex Sinclair. In February, 2 oral presentations relating to the Phase 2 pressure trial in idiopathic intracranial hypertension, IIH, were given by Professor Sinclair and Dr. James Mitchell from the University of Birmingham, with the oral abstract relating to our Phase 2 pressure trial reported in May 2020 being awarded the best abstract by a resident at that NANOS meeting, which we were pleased about. Conference presentations and podium presence are key components of the peer review process. We are pleased with the interest and engagement from the neuro-ophthalmology community on the results of the Phase 2 pressure trial and of course, Invex's plans for the Phase 3 IAH Evolve trial. Further presentations will be undertaken at the European Neuro-Ophthalmology Society, or UNOS meeting in June in Birmingham in the United Kingdom. In March, we presented at the Tech Biotech Investor Briefing to over 100 investors. And also in March, MST Access initiated issuer-sponsored equity research on the company with a valuation of $3.38 per share. In summary, we continue to make inroads with our plans. And while we appreciate that some investors may feel progress is not fast enough, it is important to recognise a drug developer like ourselves, with such an attractive market opportunity ahead of us, we have only one chance in a Phase 3 to get it right. And I don't just mean running an effective trial that seeks to minimise as much as the clinical risk as possible while attempting to deliver a statistically significant and clinically meaningful result to satisfy the regulators and convince clinicians to prescribe the drug. It also encompasses many hundreds of pages of technical information pertaining to the manufacturing processes, preclinical and clinical information, all of which needs to make the grade of global regulatory bodies such as the FDA, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, or MHRA, in the United Kingdom, and the European Medicines Agency, or EMA, in Europe. Hence, we have spent considerable time with Petron and our own advisors on exactly this process. As investors will recall, Petron are based in Osan, Korea. We look forward to completing and submitting our regulatory packages to the MHRA, applications in Europe, and to the FDA this quarter. All have differing timelines for clearance, so we would anticipate our Phase 3 will commence most likely in Australia, where we have our first application in process, with those others to follow as mentioned. Importantly, the clinical site identification and discussions in parallel are ongoing at those 40+ IAH sites I mentioned. Before we turn the call to the Q&A, as with past conference calls, I wanted to briefly summarise the keys to our business success and value creation for our investors. We have secured a long-term manufacturing partner in Petron, who at present capacity can support 12,000 patient doses of Presendin per month, noting the patient administers Presendin once per week. Hence, this represents 50% of the total incident population of IAH in our key initial markets of the UK, Europe, and Australia. This is important because if we are successful, it will be the first drug approved for IAH, and the demand to put patients on this drug as a first-line treatment or first treatment may be significant. We have repurposed this drug exenatide for IAH and branded it Presendin, as mentioned. The scientific and medical literature supports the safety profile of this drug in its original format in type 2 diabetes in many patients, and our data in IAH, alongside Petron's own sustained release formulation of exenatide, also confirms this fact. We are fully funded to complete this Phase 3 and register Presendin in multiple markets, which collectively represents $1 billion in addressable market annually in the United Kingdom, Europe, and Australia. While our trial is not designed to meet the requirements for registration with the FDA, we will use this trial to inform and work with the FDA on bringing Presendin to market in the United States at a later date. The disease IAH is underdiagnosed, and as awareness builds, the patient population is anticipated to grow in parallel with the 3.4% annual increase in incidence. Our orphan drug designations in Europe and the United States, alongside issued patents, provide significant barriers to entry for competitors that may emerge. Moreover, Invex is the only company globally in efficacy trials for IAH. With that, I would now like to turn the call over to the operator for any questions you may have. Please go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Tom. If you wish to ask a question, you will need to press the star key, followed by the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you wish to cancel your request, please press star 2. If you're on speakerphone, please pick up the handset to ask your question. Your first question comes from James Cameron from McFarlane Cameron. Please go ahead.
Tom, it's James Cameron here.
Hi, James.
It's been over 2 years since Alex and Jason have been out here to do a roadshow, and I was just wondering what the time frame is for when they're going to come back out to Australia and do another roadshow for us.
Sure, James. Happy to update there. The intention is, and noting that there's been a complete inability to travel to Australia due to the border requirements under a COVID pandemic situation. So We have had to do everything virtually until recently when the borders have now opened. And so the intention is for both Alex and Jason to come down to Australia at the AGM in November and potentially even before that, perhaps in the June-July period, but absolutely certainly for November at the AGM. But I'm certainly always happy to jump on a call virtually if the need arises with investors.
Thank you. Once again, if you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone and wait for your name to be announced. Your next question comes from Alan Suran, private investor. Please go ahead.
Hello, Tom. Thanks for that presentation. It sounds like it's making good progress. I've got a question about Europe. I think they were in the process of changing to a single application to run clinical trial in the whole of Europe. Has that already in place yet?
That regulatory change was active on 1 February 2022. That's correct. So that basically allows companies that have an intention to run a study across multiple jurisdictions in the European Union to file a single application that is applicable for all. That is one pathway. The alternate pathway is still if there are a small number of select European countries that one wishes to work with, you can still file directly with those.
And you'll be filing which pathway?
It depends on the number of selected European countries that we wish to work with. So at the time that the decision is made, we have the option to do both, but we've not made a firm commitment one way or other right now. But the intention is to file in Europe in this current quarter. So as I say, we have the option of a single filing, but we may elect to simply file directly with the health administrators in a select number of European countries where we have committed clinicians who wish to participate in the IH clinical trial, being the phase 3.
Thank you, Tom. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. There are no further questions at this time. I'll now like to hand back to Dr. Duthy for closing remarks.
Thanks very much, Matt, and thanks everyone for listening. We certainly look forward to our next update and our trial progression as we achieve these regulatory milestones ahead of us, not least of which, as I mentioned, other submissions to commence the trial in the European Union, the United States and UK this quarter. We very much look forward to the next time we get to speak to you, and please feel free to give me a call anytime. Always happy to chat to investors. So thank you again for listening.
That does conclude our conference for today. Thank you for participating. You may now disconnect.